Well, it depends on who you ask. Right? It depends on who you ask. So
Fair enough.
let's move along. So we have Joel in Athens, Alabama, who wants to talk about mutations in evolution and were they guided somehow? And you're on with Tracie and Phil. Hi, Joel.
Hello. Can you or can any scientist prove that all the beneficial genetic mutations which occurred in the history of evolution occurred by chance?
I think the question is, do we know of any that didn't?
Well, the positive claim lies with you because
I think. Okay, all right. Let me put it this way: are you suggesting that something is guiding them?
Well, if they didn't occur by chance, wouldn't it be necessary to say that they were guided?
Okay, so then, for example, if it was natural pressures, would you call that guidance? Because that's not chance.
I would. I don't know if I would call that chance. I don't know.
Right, I wouldn't either.
Really, well,
so maybe we're on the same page. Maybe we agree. Maybe we found common ground.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious why you call an atheist show instead of asking an evolutionary biologist.
Well, I don't know if an evolutionary biologist could answer it.
Well, then I certainly can.
Then, yeah,
I mean,
there's one good way to find out.
If somebody's an expert in the field and they wouldn't be able to answer it, I don't know why someone would think I could. I'll be the first to say I am not an expert in biology.
Okay.
It's not my field of expertise.
But I mean, I'm certainly welcome. Certainly, if you want to talk about, I agree with you that it's not chance. That natural, that pressure, selection pressure is not chance. But if you're suggesting that there is some cause beyond what is observable, then I'd like to hear the evidence for it.
Well, there's a difference between natural selection and genetic mutation, though.
Right, but in genetic mutation, but you're talking about beneficial mutations that go on, right, within the species.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is natural selection.
Well, natural selection, the way I understand it, is like if there's a certain, for instance, with the example Darwin gives with finches, there's a certain finch that lives in an area where it's required to have a negative beak to feed on a certain type of feed. Mm-hmm. So the animals that have narrow beaks are the ones that survive. The animals that have wide beaks.
Right. So if a bird is born, that's not a mutation. Yes, because what happens is if a bird is born that has something leaning more toward that type of beak, if that type of beak is not amenable to helping it feed, then that mutation will die out, right? If it's negatively correlated to being able to eat. So if it's positively correlated, if it some way makes it easier to eat or gives you more feeding options, right? Now I can eat this other thing too. And I have a broader range of things I can eat than the other birds, that would be a positive, like you said, a beneficial mutation. And because of selection pressures, right, how much much diversity in your diet there is definitely a plus, right? The less things you can eat, the less you are likely to survive.
Okay, but what I'm asking about are the leaps in evolution, for instance.
Right, but they will die out what I'm saying is if nature doesn't support them, then they're not beneficial. Yeah. In order for them to be beneficial...
But that doesn't account for all of evolution, though.
I'm not saying that it does. I'm saying that natural selection plays in even, like after a mutation occurs, whether or not it's beneficial is determined by natural selection.
Yeah.
Okay.
By selection pressure, I guess I should call it.
Okay, here's an example of what I'm talking about. Michael J. Behe, in his book, Darwin's Black Box, gives the example of flagella on, like, say, a sperm. It has a flagella. And he says he claims that no one can really account for how that evolved.
Yeah, Behe is a bad example to use. Even the university that employs him has put up a disclaimer. I mean, if I were you, if you're looking at Behe, you need to look at the responses that already exist to Behe, which are numerous. He was one of the people who testified in the Dover trial, and that's actually, I believe it's still available online if you want to look at it. There's a Nova documentary.
On the Dover trial.
Yeah, on...
it's really good.
What's the name of that, though? It's like Intelligent Design on Trial or something like that, but it's a Nova program on... intelligent design, and when the Dover trial occurred, and Behe was there testifying, and he used a lot of his work, and this was shot down.
And I got to meet that judge who decided that, and he was an evangelical.
I watched
Christian.
some of that, but I don't think anyone has ever demonstrated how a flagella could have evolved, because it has.
This is just like the eye. This is just like the eye thing, right? That like part of an eye is better than no eye at all. If you can differentiate dark from light, you're doing better than something that can't.
Yeah. And even if no one has ever proven a particular little thing and how it evolved, doesn't mean God done it.
Well, I know it doesn't mean God done it, but,
cool.
but there's so many millions of these. How could they all occur in 13 billion years instead of? I mean, according to William Lane Craig, it would have taken trillions of years to all be.
Have you been reading like anybody that wasn't an apologist for this stuff, right? Like that somebody that's not an apologist for intelligent design.
I watched the debates. I mean,
and I'm not. I'm like talking about research, right? Like people in like their peers responding to this in the research.
I haven't done a great deal of research. I mean, I have.
I suggest that you do. I really suggest that you do, because Behe came up with this thing called irreducible complexity. It's not a thing.
Yeah, that's what I was with.
Yeah, it's not a thing. The examples that he used have been completely explained, pulled apart. They were jumped on almost immediately after he offered them, and researchers all over the place were just like, "This is how this works."
Well, you make that claim, but you haven't offered any examples. I mean, you haven't.
Right, because I'm not a biologist, but I am telling you, and I'm telling anybody else that's interested in looking into it, to look at Behe's claims about irreducible complexity.
Well, you're telling me to do the research, but
yes,
I am. That's what we are.
I am,
because we're not evolutionary biologists.
Because what I'm telling you,
how the flagella evolved.
All right, but here's the thing: I'm telling you that there are biologists who explain this, and that information is available to you. I am also willing to admit that I do not have the encyclopedic memory of the biology research in my head, because I'm not a biologist.
In the audience,
when I get to situations like this,
wow.
I wonder, do you want to know the answer?
Well, wait. No, he doesn't want to know the answer. He'd be talking to biologists, right? That's a rhetorical
that's my point.
question.
So
but
when he says you can't answer it,
here's the thing, though. You just said maybe there's someone in the audience. So what I'm going to do is ask you to post this at the blog, right? Because the blog is for the show, and we have a blog set up, a blog entry right now at our blog at Free Thought. What is it? Free Thought Blog. Let me pull it up. It's freethoughtblogs.com/AXP. And if you go there and post, there is actually a post for this show, like the show that you're watching right now with me and Phil, and it'll say Tracie and Phil, and it'll give the show number. And if you go and you post there,
I mean, where is this on the internet?
It's called freethoughtblogs.com/AXP, and you can put your questions there, because you basically said, can you ask the audience? I don't know who's in our audience today, but also they're behind glass, so I can't ask the audience.
Okay.
But the blog has a lot of the regular viewers, and they would be happy to give you the links to what I'm talking about. Also, Talk Origins.
I was just going to say Talk Origins
is a really good website. I have a link to Talk Origins that's at this show site. I always put their link.
All assuming you want the answer.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's about.
Answer. Why would I call?
That is a good question.
No, what he's saying, I think what Phil is saying is, if you wanted the answer, you'd be talking to biologists, not to us, because we're not the people. We aren't the people that put forward the theory of evolution. And frankly, what Phil is trying to say earlier, let's say that I woke up tomorrow and evolution fell apart. It wasn't correct. Everything we thought we were doing with artificial selection, what we thought we were doing with dog breeding, is working an entirely different way than we believed, and evolution is just completely decimated in tomorrow morning. It still doesn't have anything to do with a God. It still does nothing.
Well, no, not directly, but
not even indirectly.
Not even, yeah.
You'd have to demonstrate a God exists in order to say that the God was causing anything to do with how species
Because for me, it's
emerge.
like, if you want to know the answer, ask an expert.
I agree.
If you want to prove that I don't know everything about evolution, congratulations. You have now done so.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have an argument for God's existence that you probably never heard.
Well, why didn't you start with that?
Because it's an old... Well, because this is I was more interested in this because it's something that William Lane Craig brought up in his debate with Christopher Hitchens.
Yeah, Hitchens is also not a biologist. Just
I'm
for
pretty
the record.
sure he's not a biologist.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
That's why I was saying. That's why I was saying that debates might not be the best way to figure out what's going on with biology.
Or YouTube in general. Just saying.
Okay. Well, I haven't read a great deal. I know. I mean,
That surprises me.
I haven't read a great deal on it, but.
What is your other question?
I mean, I've taken biology classes in university, but okay. My argument for God's existence is that molecules are made of atoms. Molecules are made from atoms. Atoms are made of subatomic particles. Each of these is a component layer. Each component layer is completely dependent on the layer beneath it. So molecules are completely dependent on atoms. Atoms are completely dependent on subatomic particles. There cannot be an infinite series of complete dependence for the same reason that an infinite series of zeros does not add up to one. And so there must be something at the bottom that's completely independent, and that would be God.
Why?
Yeah, I don't know how you know that.
Because it would be the source from which everything comes.
So you're saying that even if it's non-conscious, it's still a God? If it's just a purely natural, non-conscious phenomenon?
That's the problem I have. I don't know.
Yeah, me too.
I certainly don't think there's a good God that's conscious, because that's.
Well, you're basically saying that whatever is like the foundational component of matter, is
God.
Yeah, is God no matter what it is. And it's like, well, I don't think most people would accept that that's a God.
Okay.
First time I've ever heard that definition for God.
Well, I mean, there's people that have put things like that out there, like the universe is God, or
and then just call it the universe.
Yeah. So, I mean, just whatever's at the, I don't even know.
Well,
and I can't even verify that what you described is actually even like accurate from a physics standpoint, because again, you're, out of my depth. I don't know. But I do know that if it's going to be any sort of a God that has ever been put forward that I'm aware of, that God has to be demonstrated in order for anybody to say that it's like causing matter to exist or to act a certain way.
The problem with that is you have to demonstrate that something is conscious outside other than a brain.
Yeah, that is a problem.
That's a big problem.
That's not really going to happen. I mean,
I don't think so either.
I agree.
I mean, I'm open to to it being demonstrated, but I'm not hopeful. I'm not holding out much hope. But I'm happy to admit if I'm wrong.
I'm inclined to say from personal experiences I've had, which I won't really go into, that there is something more to reality than just material.
Okay, well, based on the personal experiences that we don't know about and that we're not going to hear about, I can't comment. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next caller. So what we've got next is frequent